Hey, what's up, guys? Happy Tuesday. It is April 6th. Excuse me. Today, your assignment is what is weathering. I just kind of wanted to do a quick little lecture, go over some stuff. I'm not going to go over all of the questions. That's something you're going to need to make sure you watch the other video for. But I kind of just want to highlight a few things that people have already had some questions about or some interest about. And kind of just make sure that we really understand what we're talking about here. So weathering is the process where big rocks become small rocks, right? Sometimes it goes from a huge rock to a tiny piece of sand. Sometimes a huge rock gets broken in half, right? But as long as there is a big rock and it is becoming a smaller rock, that's an example of weathering. Okay. In the video, she goes through like 6 examples of things that can cause weathering, but like I'm sure you can come up with more examples of weathering. Like I don't think at any point she says a bunch of kids going on a walk is an example of weathering. But I would say it is, because if you had a bunch of kids and they're on like a hiking trail, right? What's happening when they're stepping on the rocks, stepping on the stones? Those things are grinding together. It's grinding against their shoes. That's weathering, right? Like there's rocks that are getting broken down by that. Some of the examples she gives is like from water, right? So if you have rocks at the bottom of a waterfall or rocks on the ground from rain or whatever, water that is hitting it over and over and over and over and over is going to slowly smooth that rock out. And we see examples of that, like rocks underwater, like under the ocean or in rivers. Like if you've ever been down to the Truckee River, some rocks in the river, are still jagged, right? But a lot of times you'll find like those smooth rocks where you can kind of step on them or you slide on them. And that's because that water has rushed over it for, thousands, if not millions of years. Another example of water is when water becomes ice. So that's like water and ice, or you could say this is like also a temperature change that's causing it. So that's, 3 more things that cause weathering. But when water freezes, it expands a little bit. I think water is its largest at like -4 degrees Celsius. Don't quote me on that. It's just one of those things I've heard in my science life in the past. But ice expands regardless. So if you put, a bottle of water in the freezer and leave it overnight, that bottle will, pop out if it doesn't even break. Okay, it might even completely crack. But ice gets bigger when it freezes. So if you have water that fills a crack in a rock, right, and then nighttime comes, it gets cold and it freezes, that ice is going to expand. It might just be the slightest bit, but that crack's going to get bigger. And over time, we can get something like this picture over here, this big rock, it's kind of cracked in half, okay? Or something that could cause this, like a plant, right? We see this plant right here growing through a crack, kind of looks like a sidewalk or a stepping stone or something, or this rock right here that's cracked. But I'm sure you've seen an example where, a flower is growing out of the sidewalk, or, a tree is growing out of a crack in a rock. As that tree grows or as that flower grows, its roots are expanding under in the soil, the trunk or the stem or whatever is trying to get bigger as well. That's causing that rock to break. We have a big rock that's becoming a smaller rock. That's an example of weathering. Just reacting with the air. Oxidation happens. We see, like those red rocks. Those are oxidized rocks. Like these would be an example here. And that's just from the air interacting with it. And as that air interacts with it, that rock becomes more brittle. It's more able to break away. And then the rock underneath would react with the air, and the same thing would happen. Also an example of weathering. Animals. It's similar to like the kids going on a hike on the trail. You got some mountain goats like scurrying up a hillside. They're going to be breaking rocks. They're going to be cracking rocks. Another chemical example could be, like acid rain. So in areas with smog or, plants will naturally produce a little bit of acidity. It gets in the water. That is going to be causing weathering as well. It's going to be breaking that soil down, breaking those rocks apart. So basically, as long as you have a big rock that is being broken into a smaller rock, or a smaller rock being broken into a pebble, or pebbles being broken into sand, whatever, that's weathering. Okay, so just kind of real quick run through, look at some cool pictures. We see stuff like this in parts of Nevada, like Arizona, New Mexico. We get some really cool formations. And this is wind. Another example, I don't even know if we talked about, but like wind and sand. So if you have a desert and there's sand being blown in the wind, that's very similar to like a sandblaster, right? So if that's hitting rock that is, not the hardest rock, or even rock that's super hard, but it's being repetitively just hit over thousands and millions of years, they're going to start to break away. So we get some cool structures like this, where like that rock in the middle, maybe it was like a softer type of stone, like sandstone or something, and the rocks on the outside have more, of a harder mineral in there, so that they kind of wear and they break at different points. It's pretty neat. Or something like this, where this could have been caused by, temperature changes, where at night it contracts, in the day it expands, at night it contracts, in the day it expands, and then maybe one day it rained, and then the ice froze and cracked, breaks it apart, or maybe a plant was growing out of it. Right here's an awesome example of a plant growing out. You see a tree coming right out of this huge crack in the rock. Right here, an awesome example of like the different kinds of stone that's causing the rock to wear at different amounts. Right here, you can see the the roots of the tree is just breaking in and going into the earth. That's going to be breaking things apart as well. So tomorrow we're going to look at erosion. So erosion is when those smaller rocks that have been broken down, how they get moved and taken away. But right now, thinking about how does weathering change the earth? Look at all these pictures. Look at all this. We wouldn't have any of these crazy cool features if we didn't have weathering, right? This would just be a giant rock, right? These would just be big rocks or big mountains. We wouldn't have these cool structures. This would just be a rock and the tree would be next to it, right? Or something like this, these rocks all structured and smoothed off by that water. If we didn't have weathering, they would just be big jagged rocks. I guess the water would still be there, but it didn't weather in this hypothetical world. So for your IB assessment on Friday, it's how does weathering, how does the geoscience processes affect or change the face of the earth? Well, weathering, it gives us all these awesome, cool structures, right? These rocks get broken down, they get smoothed over, and we get these cool things. So hope that helps. Between this and your other video, you guys should be able to go ahead and crush that assignment. So go for it. Let me know if you have any questions, and have a great day. See ya.